Hey there, welcome to today's video. Today, we'll be talking all about airlines and what goes on behind the curtain. This subject is actually sparsely understood by a lot of people, and that's not so fair. Everyone should know how flights happen and what is the business that goes on behind the scenes. Ever wondered why the price for a flight to a certain destination differs per airline company? And not just that, plane ticket prices are almost never constant. The price changes with time, it changes with location, changes with the seasons, and some other seemingly irrelevant reasons. Why does this happen? Is it even legal? And what can you do to beat the system? All these and more you'll learn in today's video. Stick around! What are airlines/airplane companies? So let's pick off our discussion from the crux of the discussion. What are airlines? An airline is an airplane company that provides air transport services to passengers and freight, which are goods designated for long-distance travel. The services of these airplane companies are rendered under schedule arrangements or by charter operations. Before an airline can operate, they are licensed with an air operating certificate by a governmental aviation body. To carry out their services, airlines use aircrafts. Many times, these aircrafts are used in partnerships with code-share agreements. In other cases, these airlines have aircrafts to their services exclusively. Airplanes in general date as far back as the 19th century. However, airlines only came into the picture in the early 1900s. Around this time, aircraft use was gradually becoming a trusted means of transportation. Around that time, the German airship company Delog, founded in November of 1909, ventured into aircraft bookings for delegated courier trips within the state. As the years went by, more work was put into aircraft production. In 1916, W.H.O created the first fixed-wing airline in Europe. The company flew across the English Channel from Hendon to Paris. In November 1919, the company went on to win the British Civil Airmail contract, the first of its kind. What's interesting about this is that this company is the modern-day British Airways. On the far side of Europe, Germany too had successfully launched an airline around 1917, but later started operation in February of 1919. The Dutch Luftreederij, DLR, planned the route connecting Germany to the Netherlands, Scandinavia, and the Baltic republics. Not long after, the Dutch airline KLM came into the scene. It was established by aviator Albert Pleesman, and the company secured the backing of the royals from Queen Wilhelmina. The company still exists till date and is now the oldest continuously operating airline in the world. During these early years, airlines were owned by individuals and private organizations, well up until the 1930s when governments decided to take control of the major airline activities around Europe and America. This was majorly due to the war and the roles played by aircrafts in shifting the world powers. Then, fast forward to the 1980s. This was the era of large-scale privatization across all major industries due to changes in the world economy. This massive change affected the airline industry as well. Several airlines were sold to private bodies with certain percentages belonging to the government. This particular move changed the scene for airplane companies in particular, in so much that a number of mergers and alliances ensued in the following couple of years, and the price of flights and airline bookings changes drastically. Despite all the changes that the airline industry has gone through since the early 1900s, the use of aircraft for transport of people and goods alike has continued to fester and develop. And one remarkable change that has kept the industry going are the corporate alliances formed during the mid-ages. Large alliances like the Star Alliance, Oneworld, and SkyTeam have continued to dominate the air traffic scene, accounting for well over 60% of all global commercial air movements as of 2015. How the airline business works. Just like in most other industries, the airline industry is driven by competition and rivalries between top companies. This is what drives the majority of moves and decisions taken by these airline companies. Not all the time, but for a considerable amount of business moves that ultimately affect the customer, passengers, and courier agencies. The competitiveness of the industry is not such that it is limitless, however. There are regulatory bodies that govern how moves are made by the individual organizations. Speaking of regulation, the airline industry drastically changed its mode of operation since the 1978 U.S. airline industry deregulation. This was a period in which the U.S. economy took a downturn, and this led to the government loosening up a bit on airline companies. Upon the deregulation, many startup airline companies began to spring up. This posed a major threat to the existing big fishes that had been controlling aircraft commercialization. One of the major consequences of this deregulation was the fact that almost half of the total flying in the world took place in the US due to the ready availability of airlines looking for customers. Then, as expected, the major players in the airline industry made moves to keep dominating their routes even after the deregulation. This led to aggressive pricing and additional capacity offerings by these established companies. During this time, the term boss leader pricing pervaded the business scene. What does this mean? It's a strategy where the big corporations lowered the fares on a number of routes below the operating cost. This basically meant they ran on a loss, all for the purpose of gaining the majority patronage. And of course, the newbies couldn't keep up with such business ideals, as the majority of them lacked the funding to do so. But this move did not go without effect on the industry. There was an overall drop in revenue and service quality. The average domestic ticket price actually dropped by 40% over the years. Soon, a good number of the big airlines were on the verge of bankruptcy. Interestingly, a group of new entries into the airline industry were bold enough to reduce the operation cost of an airplane, and with that, they could even roll out ticket prices on specific routes lower than those of the legacy airlines. It was indeed a battle to finish. In no time, the new guys, Southwest Airlines, JetBlue, AirTran Airways, Skybus Airlines, and other low-cost carriers became a serious competitive threat to the big guns. This sort of industry dynamic was not limited only to the US. In major countries in Europe, like France, Britain, and Germany, the legacy airlines who had established systems for maintaining airline pricing and quality were forced to review their standards with the booming of the industry startups, which were pulling investors fast and steady. What really determines the price of flights? From all the discussion around the business model of airlines, there's only one way it boils down to affect the common man. That is the price of flights. No one really cares what mergers or takeovers airlines partake in, so far as it doesn't increase the price of their next vacation flight by a cent. Heck, people would even praise the companies if their business moves resulted in lower prices of flights. But as it stands, airlines around the world now have a price range for commercial flights. This pricing not only varies from one airline company to another, but is even more affected by a series of factors affecting the demand for these companies' services. What are these factors, and why do they affect the price of flights? We'll explain these as we go on. Like we said earlier, the goal of any business, airlines inclusive, is to make profit. That means the goal of the services these airlines provide is to make profit. While making profit, they also seek to ensure their services are not overpriced, which may give competitors an undue advantage. So, in a bid to strike a balance, airlines now use a computerized yield management system to come up with ticket prices considering all the factors necessary. Some of the factors that affect the price of flights are remaining days until departure. This holds for all airlines. The closer the departure date, the higher the price of flights. This is only logical, as the demand is most likely higher at this period. Reasons include last-minute travel calls, indecision of some travelers, procrastination on the part of the majority of travelers, among others. Forecast of total demand. This is determined by the route of the flight. For busy channels, the flight tickets would cost more because there is more demand. And for certain destinations that host more travelers during certain seasons, the price of flights go up due to this. This comes in handy during holiday seasons, vacation periods during the summer, and religious pilgrimage. Competitive pricing. There's no need telling that the price of competitor airlines influences the price of an airline flight. Before setting a benchmark price, most of the airlines do a market review. Day of week of departure. Naturally, people tend to travel more on weekends. So, if you're booking a flight to depart on a weekend day, chances are that it would cost more than it would on a regular weekday. Time of the day on departure. Mornings are more filled up than night takeoffs. Booked load factor. Depending on the carriage capacity of the aircraft to be used by the airline, passengers are billed based on their luggage weights and size. Origin to destination control. This factor has to do with airlines having to choose the ideal passenger to sell to who would bring the most profit. Take, for example, a passenger who would alight en route the final destination, leaving up space to pick up another, which means more profit from that one seat. A key method airlines use to sell air services for its worth and get an all-inclusive customer feed is through differentiated pricing. This is what is termed as classing of the cabin, where we have the first class, the business class, and the economy class, all of which provide different qualities and sell at different prices. With all these factors at play, airlines use a computer system called Sabre to estimate appropriate flight ticket prices per trip per time. The good thing is that once you know how this system works, you can always travel for cheaper. For starters, you can always order for flight tickets much earlier for cheaper rates. Now, down to the actual pricing of these airlines. The hustle and bustle around airfare pricing among the various airlines trying to outperform the competition has led to what is commonly termed fare war. This majorly occurs with the legacy carriers. That's why these airlines have their fare-generating systems connected to the Airline Tariff Publishing Company, ATPCO, which help them air their latest offers to the public. This form of pricing distribution is actually less evident in low-fare carriers, as they often offer pre-announced price structure. And that's a wrap for today's video on airlines and airplane companies. If you enjoyed watching this, like this video and leave a comment about your experience with airlines. You should also subscribe to this channel for more interesting videos like this. Till next time, stay frosty.